I'm gonna record. Yeah, no, because
Cool.
everyone's at different sort of levels. You know what I mean? And it's what we're doing is we're all learning from each other. That's the whole idea behind this.
100%. The fact that you're willing to avail yourself to everyone, irrespective of those different levels, is really, really admirable.
Thank you. Okay, this is perfect.
Cool.
I'm just gonna let you talk as I take a look at your notes here and take a look at your work.
Okay.
What do you think is the biggest problems that you're having?
So actually, I do think I found this whole experience actually quite triggering. I think certainly I've done a lot of like highlighted, but never go back to highlights, right? And so having to go through the notes that I write and kind of process them, they all end up with this kind of really introspective bent, which is very, very draining and very depleting.
You said very depleting?
Depleting, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's because I'm going through a bit of a process. So, I think that's also a function of, the books and the work that I'm doing are all kind of around learning and digging in. So it's kind of got that natural slant. And I kind of hope maybe shifting to different subject matter might alleviate some of that.
By the way, everyone, I'm reading through his work, and his work is phenomenal. So it's
thanks.
Yeah, I mean, you've put in the work, and
I've done the work. I'm nowhere near as prolific as a lot of the people. But as I say, part of that's because each of these does feel like it's quite extractive, and I think maybe that's just a case of I'm exercising a muscle I haven't really exercised that much, and I just got to keep doing it, and I think the ease will come.
Listen, this is a completely different way of working.
And
it goes counter to how we were taught in school. It goes counter to how we've been graded in school, our successes, right? And it goes counter to everything that we've learned up to this point, from childhood on. So of course it's like, what am I doing? Right now I'm just taking a look at the structure. This is the sort of, let me go and pull this out.
That's not me. I think you might have a different person.
This is not you.
No. So my work's not that exceptional, unfortunately.
That is not you. I know you had one of them in here. Let's go in.
I was quite taken aback by that. So
let's take a look. Okay. This is great. Screenshot in there. Let's go take a look at the fleeting notes. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking a look at the form here.
Cool.
And let me go ahead and stop sharing real quick. Let me share this screen one more time.
Okay.
There we go. Excellent. Let me just take a look.
Cool.
It's great. This is great. This is great. You're asking the questions. Yep. I would even try to answer it. I mean, you did it here. This is great. Feels very conceptual. That's the idea. And I think, how do I do this? Okay. And then the fleeting notes summary. If I close this, we're learning. This is fantastic. So basically all of this work that you do here, all of this informs you of what the author is saying here. I just did a video with Simon Scarf. I just uploaded it to the shared graph in the coaching sessions side. Phenomenal. Like if you take a look at that, it's really going to cement, it's going to solidify what you're doing now in someone else's voice. I can only articulate it in my voice, and to hear Simon articulate it was fantastic. And it was just nice to sort of capture that moment. But
awesome.
Yeah, let me just take a look here.
I don't know what I'm going to do when I run out of all these videos, to be honest.
It doesn't end. I've got a community that I'm setting up right now.
Awesome.
Yeah. See, this is great because I mean, one of the biggest delineations is these are more like I statements, and these are
Yes.
more like you statements. You know what I mean,
Yeah.
or them statements, and that's the sort
So
of idea.
it's interesting because one of the things I do wonder is when I get to the sort of declarative statements with the permanent notes, I very often wonder about the whether I'm saying I, me, you, one, or doesn't really make a difference.
I think it depends on the note that comes before it, and
Okay.
it depends on the conversation that you want to have.
That makes sense.
You know, it's
Mm.
I think when you do a declarative statement in I don't think that's as powerful as saying a declarative statement in the third person, like them.
In a general sense, because you're
Yeah.
saying something is universally applicable or true
Yeah.
versus a subjective. That makes sense.
This is fantastic. So fleeting notes and literature notes look spot on, right?
Cool.
And that informs the permanent note. Looking at the structure here, this looks fantastic. All the relevant notes are in there.
So something I picked up in the Rodrigo video that I was kind of doing wrong was I was adding notes that I felt were related that were in the parent structure above the current permanent note, and so I went back and undid all of that in my personal graph. It did feel like I broke the links for a while, but I actually think there's a CSS formatting issue at times with the relevant notes on the sidebar.
We'll take a look at that in a second.
Okay,
I'm just
cool.
going to take a look at your other note just so I can see
Cool.
consistency.
Yep.
This is great. This is great.
So in a way, this literature note is actually a little bit more.
It's more
yeah.
fleeting. You know,
Yes.
you didn't really allow the author to come into the conversation.
Yeah.
But you know, listen, you just how you do this is just by learning. My first, first dozen permanent notes weren't the best, but there's no other way to get through to it. You just have to learn. And I think watching other people's videos is going to help.
Mm-hmm.
And then also this session is going to help to sort of crystallize it for you. Let me ask you this. I see your work.
Yeah.
Right. Have you started your own personal Zettelkasten yet in your own graph?
I've started, but most of it is kind of what I've done is try to keep the two in sync. I didn't want to waste the effort that I've put into those other notes. I have rearticulated the permanent notes and the index for my own personal graph. I don't know. So my own personal graph now starts with a rather arbitrary permanent note as the top level subject, which feels a bit
Can we take a look?
Weird. Yeah. Purely because I've kept the
we'll fine tune it right now.
Cool.
And it's like, for me, I've always trusted my instincts. So it's like, if it feels off, then it usually means something's off.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay, this is perfect. I can see.
Cool.
And you said it says engagement, but where did that come from?
Engagement came from what I felt was the substance of the note, based on looking at the fleeting notes and the literature notes, etc. As opposed to, it didn't come from a place of what do I want this conversation to be about. For the first note.
So this one is different than what's in the shared graph, correct?
I think so. It should be, because I did try and rewrite.
Can you just click on that failure by the individual?
Yep.
Go back to that. Click on that real quick, and scroll. Okay, perfect. Right there. Just stay right there. How to read a book. I'm looking at it right now. Okay, so
Cool.
and this is location 169. Okay, I've got your page open right now. I'm just sort of flicking through it real quick. I just want to find it, and then I can compare and contrast.
So this first one is actually going to be quite similar, I think, to the shared graph, because it might have been the first one that I moved across, and because it was the initial one, it didn't warrant changing, essentially, because it set the conversation. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing.
Yeah, but the others will be different, and the reason being that was the first one that I stuck in. But I see now, in if I'm reading between the lines, that essentially even though it was the first permanent note, I needed to frame it differently because it's defining the arc of a conversation, essentially.
Okay, so this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Just so everyone knows, can you go to the shared graph?
Mm-hmm.
And can you just type in the search bar of the shared graph?
Mm-hmm.
We are more concerned with, and then the first block right there. Yeah, click on that, and click on relevant notes in the breadcrumbs.
Cool.
Yep. And what that's going to do is going to zoom it out of the block and hit. And then now what I want you to do is I want people that are watching to see this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Failure by the individual to interrogate the substance of an issue renders their response empty performance. Go back to your graph.
Mm-hmm.
Failure by the individual to interrogate the substance of an issue renders their response empty performance.
Mm-hmm.
But can you go back to can you go back to the shared graph?
Yep.
And click on failure by the individual to interrogate the permanent note itself. Yeah, just so I can see it. And what we're going to do now is we're going to see where this conversation is happening in the permanent notes, right? So it shows up at the daily notes at the top and then the location and the permanent notes underneath it. Now, the reason that the permanent note works here is because there's a conversation that's already going. And that conversation is teaching, impact, engagement, right? And if you go back to your personal graph, and you'll notice that on the sidebar for everyone watching, it's actually at the very top, right? So the conversation is actually starting with this new permanent note. But the thing is, what I have a feeling is
I kind of feel like
have you ever heard the phrase self-sabotage?
Yeah. It's the recurring theme in my life. Don't worry. I'm well versed in. I come from a recovery background as well, so I'm very well versed in it.
Because this is what that looks like.
Thanks so much, Bo.
This is what it looks like. This looks like you listen. I'm looking at your work. Your fleeting notes are phenomenal. You know the difference between a fleeting note and a literature note. Your permanent notes are structured beautifully, and the indexes are congruent with your permanent notes. All the mechanics are there. Yeah. Right? Yet, it was almost like, you almost put this obstacle in front of you, and it's just very interesting.
What I don't like about what you're suggesting is that if you're going to tell me I have to change that permanent note, it means I have to change all of these permanent notes, and I think you actually take a sort of a masochistic pleasure in the thought.
Well, the reason you have to, first off, is because it's your top level parent block. So all the conversations underneath it actually aren't correct. That's why it's askew. That's why you're asking these questions. These questions, if you have 5 permanent notes, you wouldn't have these questions. Yeah. But the fact that you do means that your Zettelkasten isn't really talking to you. It's distorted a little. It's like, those circus mirrors?
Yes.
Right? It's kind of like carnival mirrors. It's a little bit like that. You can see your shape in there, but there's a little bit of distortion, and it's happening at the very first one. And this is why I had the idea of self-sabotage. But we can fix this.
But okay, because I think part of the challenge in that is that the nature of the book that I'm reading is not one that's going to start off as Zettelkasten with a bang, right? In terms of defining really interesting thematic conversations that I want to. It's a practical, instructive book that's not going to. I mean, it's going to have interesting ideas and important
This
things
book right here.
Correct.
Okay,
but
can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you do me a favor? Can you share your graph with me?
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go to, yeah, you know exactly how to do it. And then just Bohan at bohan.com. And then just make sure you hit that X afterward, BEAU, yeah, you got it. And then just make sure you hit X when you're done with this. So you can unshare it with me. And hit enter.
Wait, no. Leave that, right?
Yeah, leave that. And then for editors, hit enter.
Cool.
In that box. And then now, yeah, exactly. And when you're done with it, hit that X, okay?
Perfect. Cool,
now,
cool.
Lensvelt?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. This is perfect. So this is what I want to do. So basically, we're just going to do a little,
surgery.
Chiropractor. Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Exactly what we're going to do. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And bop, bop, bop. And I'm going to hide that. I'm going to hide this as well. And so now I want to go back to your, what was the name of it called again?
Failure to.
Yeah, failure to.
God, it's boring.
Perfect. We'll find it. We'll find it. It's this one right here, right? So this is what I want to do. I want to go back to this one, and it's under engagement, right? I'm going to click on the bullet point just to get into Zoom, and this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I know you're going to get mad at me, but sometimes it takes a little.
I trust your judgments absolutely at this point, but
this is what I'd like to do. Or before I actually do this, let's just take a look at the source material real quick.
Cool.
So this is the actual source, right?
Yeah.
Can you just read this out loud to me?
But the packaging is often done so effectively that the viewer, listener, or reader does not make up his own mind at all. Instead, he inserts a packaged opinion into his mind, somewhat like inserting a cassette into a cassette player. He then pushes a button and plays back, inverted commas, the opinion whenever it seems appropriate to do so. He has performed acceptably without having to think.
Can you read through? I mean, you have access to the same page, right? Can you read through? Can you read through this and give me a summary of what this is saying in your own words?
Read through the reference itself.
Well, I don't need you to read it aloud. I just want you to. Can you just tell me what this is about?
Yeah, basically, it's saying that we don't do the work anymore. It's kind of like the media is driven by a convenience function that packages things into forms that make them easier for us to consume, and we consume them unthinkingly without kind of examining them. And then we just regurgitate them when it's our turn to step on the stage briefly, without actually really having any real connection to the substance of what's being said.
What else does this mean?
Or
you know what? That's good. I feel like you're very solid on that. This is what I want to do instead. What does it mean to consume without thinking?
What does it mean to consume without thinking?
What resonates with you when I say that?
It's unconsciousness. It's unconsciousness. And for me, that's kind of the root of pretty much all of the world's problems, right? From whatever level, from a macro level to the individual level. And so it's an absence of responsibility for choosing your actions, knowing why you do, what the consequences are. It's and it's really the only thing that matters. And yet we pay no heed to it whatsoever. And it's no wonder we're in the malaise we're in.
What is this malaise?
It's just this.
Describe that, yeah, specifically.
Yeah, it's kind of like an unthinking, unconscious, zombie-like drudging through life without kind of looking around, looking in, looking up, seeing with clear eyes. I don't know. It's just it's not very alive.
What does it mean to regurgitate?
It's an automatic response. It's a physiological. Well, I mean, it's stimulus response. There is something in me, and I need to get it out, so I just do it. It's unthinking. It's not something I can control. But it's like there's no discernment. I don't choose what comes up. What comes up comes up.
Why does that resonate?
It's a reflex action. I think it's a reflex action is what I'm getting at.
Why does that resonate with you?
To something.
Why does that resonate with you? Why is that important to you?
So often, and this is where I talk about it comes back to that introspective thing, because I often wonder whether I've ever had an original thought in my life. I consume very broadly. I read a lot of things. I'm not sure I do much work in interrogating what I read. And I often wonder in a conversation or any kind of engagement whether what I trot out is just regurgitating somebody else's idea rather than kind of a deep understanding of my own, or some kind of original thought. So in a sense, it's a question I have for myself.
What do you think the answer is?
It's probably somewhere between the two. There's an element of regurgitation, but there is an element of interrogating. I'm not inherently a passive person. Whether I apply the rigor that I could or should is a different question, but also perfection is an unrealistic expectation. So I'm probably being a little bit hard on myself, but there's definitely room for improvement.
Of course. What does it mean to have no real connection? What resonates with you when I say no real connection?
Well, connection is the root of everything in all forms. So to self, to others, to a higher power, to whatever. And it's the absence of connection that is, again, it's the same as unconsciousness to some degree. That's the root of all problem in the world, right? Disconnection from self, disconnection from others, disconnection from the present moments, disconnection from something bigger, or sense of life. So connection is a really big theme.
And if you had to summarize what you just said, how would you summarize that?
I don't know, and the reason I say that is because I've got a really poor memory, so I kind of would need to look over it and kind of put it together.
Can you go and share your screen?
Yeah.
Can you go to your graph?
Let me just find share screen. Yeah.
Perfect. And let's go to your daily notes page and go to March 11th.
Cool.
And look for 11:48 timestamp. Perfect. Click on the bullet point next to 11:48. And let's go ahead and close your sidebar, the right sidebar, just so you can make a little bit of room.
Yeah.
And then let's click on the bullet point next to relevant notes underneath 11:48.
Okay, hang on.
The actual bullet point, not the caret. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, perfect. And then let's go ahead and expand out fleeting notes. And if you scroll down, you'll notice that I created that right there. If you want to just go ahead and summarize that at the top level parent block, you can go ahead and redo that. All I did was basically I wrote down what you were saying. So I did my best to transcribe in your own words. So if you can summarize what this is saying at the top level parent block for me.
Yeah.
And take your time, please.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably it.
That looks fucking beautiful. Let's go ahead and move that up.
Cool.
And
up to the okay.
Or let's just copy that text and move that to the top level parent block for fleeting notes.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Perfect. I just want to make sure we get the first permanent note right. You know what I mean?
100%.
And this is important. I kind of wanted to walk you through it. And so now what I'd like for you to do is this. I'd like for you to process the rest of this on your own. I'm just going to watch the mechanics. You already know what to do. Process the literature notes, and from there create your first permanent note. But I just wanted to see it all happen. Okay.
Cool. So you want me to redo the literature notes as well?
Yeah, I have that.
Cool.
I have that under old, so we can just write on top of it or whatever you want to do.
Okay, cool.
Yep. And I'll leave you to it.
I just want to get rid of this. Why is it not?
Just as you're going along, I just kind of want to give you a little commentary for people that are watching. So what Brett's doing right now is he's taking the information from the fleeting note abstractions and he's meeting the author now. And he's taking what the author is saying and he's proving that he understands it by saying it in his own words, what this means to him. And The reason that this is so easy for him now is because of all the abstractions that happened in the fleeting notes phase. And if you gave this article or this sentence or phrase to 10 different people, you would have 10 different literature and fleeting notes and permanent notes. So as you're watching, you'll notice that the word regurgitate is in his literature note abstractions. There's nothing in the reference note that says anything about that, but it's from the abstractions from the fleeting notes that resonated with him, that gave him the information in order to be able to abstract what the author is saying in his own words. And that right there is beautiful.
So that might be too personal again. I probably shouldn't use the I statement.
I think
but I mean it in a third person sense. So
there is no hard and fast rules, by the way, Brett. But
yeah.
I think what's going to happen is your trust and faith in this lightweight, simple structure is going to start revealing itself to you. And as that happens, you'll have more and more confidence of where to stop and where to continue, right? But this is what I'd like for you to show everyone right now. Go ahead and expand all your old literature notes real quick.
Cool.
Right click on that, that line right there. Yeah, just right click on that and expand all. And if you'll notice, if you let everyone that's watching notice, that it doesn't say anything as powerful as what you have in your literature note right now. Or let me say that again. It's not that it's not as powerful, because this is still a powerful literature note, but it doesn't mention anything about regurgitate. It doesn't mention anything about self-satisfaction and smugness, right? It doesn't mention anything about a baby seagull responding to the fake parent, right? And so this is important. So now what I'd like for you to do is go back up to the top and summarize on the top level literature note block, just so you can quickly access what's inside that big wall. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is called the thinking process. How does that feel? Or please keep going.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, look, I think that's probably, yeah, I think that's probably as good as I'm going to get on that.
And if you need to open up the note, you can find more of the information, right? So let's go ahead and shift click on permanent. Let's go ahead and X everything that's in the sidebar. Let's go ahead and X that just so we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Perfect. And now, what's the conversation that you want to begin with? This is the first permanent note. So this is the only time where you actually get to create the conversation. What's the conversation that you want to start with yourself, with your dialogue partner, with your formidable communication partner? What's the conversation that you want to begin with? And start it with the index or the 1 or 2 words that would summarize what this conversation is going to be about.
So it would be about, I often find myself asking the question, what do I think? As kind of a challenge to myself in terms of, is this something that I'm just swallowing, or, what, like, people often say, you really should write. And I go, well, if you're going to write, you need to have something to say. And I've never really felt that I have something to say. And so then the prompt to that statement is, well, what do I think? And so I guess it would be around that. What do I think? I don't know what.
Well, here's a better way of framing it, because I almost feel like a little bit of the top-down way of looking at it is coming into play.
Yeah.
Because we need to remember that we're not just coming up with a topic right now. We're looking back at our fleeting notes. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and delete these old literature notes. I'm going to delete these old fleeting notes. And now I'd like for you to go back and read through what you wrote.
Okay.
Take a look at what you wrote from the fleeting notes and the literature notes, and let that inform what this conversation is going to be about. And basically, before you write your declarative statement, declarative is clarity. Before you write your declarative statement, think of a thumbnail of how to describe that in 1 or 2 words, what that declarative statement is going to be about.
So you always start with the index first?
Always.
Interesting. Okay.
This is the thinking process, ladies and gentlemen. This is called the critical thinking process.
It's not perfect.
Make it perfect. Make it, rather than perfect, make it declarative. The root word of declarative is clarer, which means clarity. It's where the root word clarity comes from. Make it clear with clarity. This is where the power of how you set this up, you can look through your fleeting notes and literature notes as well. It's all there, and the reference notes too.
I think that's better.
That looks pretty fucking clear to me. That looks like a tweet from Naval. You know, that does. How does that feel?
Yeah, much better, definitely. And it is interesting, the impulse to kind of stop earlier and go, okay, cool, I've done enough, and then the challenge, the push to do it sort of better, definitely made a difference.
It's truly the thinking process that makes us remember our permanent notes, and it makes us remember our Zettelkasten. And that, what you're doing right now, this is why it takes time. And honestly, after doing 3 or 4 permanent, like doing 3 permanent notes back to back should be draining. It ought to be draining. If you're doing it right, like 1 permanent note is draining. If you do 2 or 3 in a row, no, you have to step away.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's because of that, what you're doing right now. And you know, back in Luhmann's day, he didn't have to go as deep as we do now, because the information was there and he had the time to wrestle with these ideas without the distractions.
Yeah.
Because we have distractions in our life, we have to go, I am going to focus, critically think about this for the next 15 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And we only need to do that once. And if we can do that and bring it up from fleeting note to permanent note, then we've done the job. And so now I look back at this and I'm like, that's a permanent note.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with the shared graph permanent note, even though that was perfect as well. This one is your voice. I don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see a distortion at all. It's a collection of you.
Yeah.
So now I encourage you to sort of, can you go ahead and share your screen again?
Yeah, for sure.
When are they shutting off your power, by the way? Do we have another?
Yeah, we got enough time. It's it'll probably shut in about 45 minutes.
Okay, so we got time. Let's go ahead and complete the permanent note creation process here by double bracketing the permanent note existing authentically.
Of course, yeah.
And what that's going to do, it's going to go ahead and make that into a page. Perfect.
Yep.
And then link that information back to the daily notes page. Perfect. Now, this is what I want to do. Let's go ahead and hit the breadcrumb for March 11th.
Yep.
And let's go find, let's go to search real quick. Go to search and type in virtually all pursuits. Perfect. And let's go and click on March 12th.
Okay.
And let's go to 741 and click on that bullet point so we can zoom into focus. And let's delete everything except for the literature notes and the fleeting notes.
What a disappointment.
Huh?
What a disappointment.
Yeah. But you're about to have your mind blown.
No. I get it. It. Okay, cool. And yeah, cool.
Yep. And let's clean up that part right there.
Yeah.
Perfect. And so now this is what I want you to do. Okay. Let's go ahead and expand the literature and fleeting notes, because the work you did was phenomenal already. Like, obviously this is working, and sure, you used I statements and over here, over here, but it doesn't matter. You did the abstraction. You know what I mean? The work has been done. So what I'd like for you to do now is take a look at your fleeting notes, take a look at your literature notes, take a look at both of the summaries, and let's go ahead and close the sidebar real quick.
Cool.
Yep, hit X on the sidebar. Perfect. Now, take a look at the fleeting notes, take a look at your literature notes. When you get to that point when you're like, okay, I remember what this is about.
Yes.
Right? Then shift click on permanent notes and either start a new conversation or continue the conversation. And I'm just going to let you do it. Okay?
Cool. Thank you.
I'm going to step away to give you a little privacy, okay?
Cool.
just want to walk you through some of this real quick, okay? Just to remind you. You already know what to do. I just wanted to remind you, okay? So
100%.
now you know what the fleeting notes and literature notes are. Let's go ahead and for me, it's all about scope, right? And focus. So let's go ahead and close the close. Oh no, you can keep that open, but in the
Cool.
permanent notes sidebar, let's collapse your old permanent notes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it.
Let's close the block outlines for the other two.
Cool.
Yeah, perfect. And now it's basically
Got it.
all the information's right there, right?
Mhm.
And now you can focus critically. Okay. So you read through your fleeting notes, you read through your literature notes, and now the question is, what's the conversation that I want to continue or begin? Is it going to be ownership blank, or is it going to be a new conversation? And this is why creating the index first or the thumbnail first is important, because when you have a list of permanent notes, it takes more focus and friction to read every permanent note. But if you can make a thematic connection with ownership and with this new note, or just this new note as a top level parent block, there's already a thematic connection. So you don't have to create the thematic connection with the larger high resolution picture.
Yeah.
So let me just answer this for me. Is this going to continue the conversation of ownership, or is this going to be a new conversation? Is it going to be ownership blank, or
it's going to be an extension of ownership?
Okay, perfect. What would that thumbnail be?
So it's fairly vanilla, but it seems like questions for me. And so here's where I come back to this idea of whether or not I'm having an original thought, because all I'm getting from this really is needing to live the questions, which is actually Brother Spirit's quotes in Slack yesterday.
So in response to ownership, you have a new index that says questions, which thematically connects ownership and questions. I see the relationship. There's a thematic. It's like rabbit, carrot, farm, right?
Yeah.
So it's ownership, questions. And now create a declarative statement for questions in regards to ownership. Being informed by your fleeting notes and literature notes.
I think that works.
What are you thinking? I think it's beautiful. It's clear. It's declarative. It's an original idea. And the best part about it is, if you posted this on Twitter, and if anyone ever argued this declarative statement that you made, you can point back to all of your work that you did to get to this idea. Now, this is what I want you to do. Just close your eyes for a second. Just close your eyes. I'm going to say something, okay?
Cool.
Tell me if this makes sense. Existing authentically requires doing the work to enable you to state and own who you are and what you think unapologetically. All of life is a question. The only way to come close to answering it fully is to live it.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
That to me sounds like the beginning of a paragraph of this great chapter that I'm about to read in a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those are all your words, dude. I'm just saying.
Thanks, Bo.
I
appreciate that.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a really important lesson here, I think, for me, in terms of not stopping halfway and kind of holding yourself to a higher standard, yeah.
Expand upon that, please.
Well, I think that something you're really good at doing is teasing more out of people by kind of challenging people to go deeper and to explore further and not to stop at good enough. And that helps people to, and that's the reason this whole process has worked, I think, is because it's been hard and you've challenged people. And I think that very often people, and by people I mean specifically me, people step back from the challenge rather than kind of moving forward to meet it. And I think inevitably that's an underestimation of most people's ability to meet a challenge. And so it's a really good reflection for me, just this little process that we've gone through here that's kind of analogous to that. So thank you.
Caught it because you got it. You caught it because you got it. If you look if you look at your permanent notes that you wrote, like you ought to be a motivational speaker or a success coach, or you know what I mean? It's like
I think you got that one. I think you got that market covered better.
Well, I mean, this is great. Existing authentically requires doing the work to enable you to state and own who you are and what you think unapologetically. All of life is a question. The only way to come close to answering it fully is to live it. That is phenomenal. Can you go to share your screen?
Sure.
Let's go ahead and finish out the work. Let's go to double bracket that, add that over to.
Cool. Then there's no linking that happens here because they're inherently connected by the parent-child relationship.
You're absolutely right. Can you go ahead and change questions on the daily notes page to brackets just for the CSS to pop up? It's just one of those things.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, you're right. Sorry. I actually normally do that. I normally do that.
I haven't work around that yet, but
yeah. Yeah, totally.
Because I need to be able to delineate that the index and the permanent notes page is different, and I need to be able to way to have the CSS pop up in that color, and there's no way to mix those two at the moment. And so now 100%. What I'd like for you to do now is go into your search bar. We have another 15 minutes or so, right? Go to the search bar, and we'll hammer out one more. Now I'd like for you to go to Understanding is Earned. First one, perfect. And let's go to the daily notes page for March 11th. And let's go to 12:37 timestamp. Let's go and click on that. Let's go and delete everything that's not usable. So let's go to delete the index, the permanent note. Perfect. And go ahead and expand the literature and fleeting notes. I'm just going to leave you to it again. Just read through it just like you did before, and then look through your permanent notes, see if it continues the conversation or if it's a new conversation.
Cool.
How's that feel?
Yeah, good. Good, much easier.
Mm.
Much easier.
How much self-confidence from when we started this coaching session to now, how much self-confidence do you have in yourself right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, there's no question it's improved.
Why?
I'm not 100% sure why. I think it's probably because I'm realizing that I can do this. So yeah.
It's not that you can, you did do this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm one lucky son of a gun because I get to watch this.
Mm.
And it's like literally watching light bulbs just pop, 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 turn on.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it's just,
yeah, I mean, I can see how that would be massively energizing,
yeah.
and really good, and really, fruitful reward for like the huge amount of work, effort, thought, intent, everything that you've thrown into this. It's amazing. Thank you.
My pleasure. And again, thank you for allowing me and us to be on this journey with you. And I'm excited to see what comes out of this as you begin trusting this more and more. Do you feel the reflection of these notes like more like
there's no these notes are way more congruent with me and the conversations I have than they were previously, and I think that's partly where the ease comes from, or the greater sense of flow, whereas in the past it was kind of like trying to crowbar it into something. And it's also, I think, just on a process side of things, it's become that much clearer how important asking yourself where in the conversation this sits explicitly, and then defining the thumbnail up front. I mean, you've always said that, but I think I always felt they were more tacit than explicit, and having that clarified, I think, makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
For me.
I just love how you said it's like it's frictionless. It's less effort. It's flow. It's flow. You know, and yet it's still it's taxing on the brain. It's taxing on the mind. And yeah,
it is. But I can see how, through gradual, consistent repetition over time, how this will find its own flow. I mean, I don't think it'll ever be easy, but it'll certainly become more intuitive, and that's really where it needs to get to.
My next question is this: do you feel like you've felt out what this balance on this bicycle feels like? Like,
yeah, definitely.
And I believe that as well. You could literally start riding your bike on your own now.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's changed the way that I read. So now when I read and I highlight, like I'm learning, I can't highlight something without capturing a fleeting note there and then. Otherwise, it's pointless, right? Whereas in the past, I would read it and go and sort of think, okay, well, that's interesting, highlight it and just keep going and never come back to it. So, yeah.
And as you start building out your notes, you're going to start to see the things that are important and the things that aren't important. And that discernment, being able to go, I already know this. It's already in my Zettelkasten. Or I already know this. It is in my Zettelkasten, and I saw that it wasn't getting any more branches underneath it. It wasn't very interesting to me. There's no inline linked references pointing to that. It shows me that I'm not interested in this. No matter how much I'm like, oh, this is cool, it shows me what I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
But it also shows me what I am interested in. And obviously you're interested in ownership.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting part. And as you create new top level branches, and as you create other branches from this, you can start connecting these ideas. And that's where it's just going to compound. Like, yeah, it's a penny right now. It's 2 cents. It's 4 cents. It's 16 cents. It's going to explode.
Yeah.
And
no, I can see it.
And in preparation for that, I know we got to close here soon because the
Sure.
In preparation for that, I do recommend and I do suggest really figuring out the most frictionless way of capturing.
Yeah.
The most frictionless way of just, when I capture, I know exactly where it's going to go. When I want to process and work on something that I captured, maybe the next day or the next week, I know exactly how that workflow looks. And what that's going to do, it's going to ease. It's one less decision you need to make to go, I'm going to build something now. I'm going to build my Zettelkasten right now.
Yeah.
And so that would be my only suggestion. And
look, I played around with the custom Readwise imports template, and that's made it virtually frictionless. You lose a little bit of the context in terms of the highlight. You miss the surrounding paragraph, but for the rest of it, it just brings it in, and it's frictionless.
What if you highlighted the whole entire paragraph, right? And then when you captured it, if you go in, I think if you go back and watch the Tristan video again, you can actually hyper highlight, is what he called it.
Yeah, I missed that, right?
So if you highlight the whole paragraph, that gives you more context.
Yeah.
But then when you capture it, I mean, you're not capturing the whole paragraph. You're just capturing, like, you're highlighting the whole paragraph. You write your fleeting notes, and then as you're editing that out, you highlight the sentence or the phrase, and then you hit bold or underline, and then it'll hyper highlight it.
But that's in a physical book, right?
It's in any Readwise highlight.
So any Readwise highlight. So I can do that in Kindle as well.
Yeah. So basically, you capture your Kindle highlight, capture the whole paragraph.
Yeah.
Right. And then you go back to what your highlight, and then you go back and you underline through the Kindle or whatever that looks like. It's just, he called it hyper highlighting. And then
I'll go and check it out.
In my head, where it's like you can capture the context and then also capture the phrase.
Yeah.
So that way you have more when you look back in the reference notes.
Yeah. I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Proud of you. I'm
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything.
Watching you think this out was phenomenal. And I'm more convinced the connection between thinking and writing and thinking is so apparent. And let's circle back, though. I think people need to see the progress that you're having as well. So let's circle back once you get about 20 notes, and we'll jump on another session probably 2 weeks from now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Awesome, Brett.
Thanks, guys.
All right, man.
Cheers. Bye-bye.